Good evening, everybody. Today we have one item on the agenda, and it's COVID-19 Human Services Update. And I want to welcome Kelly Beamer, Community Services Administrator. Thank you, Kelly, for being with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President Perez and council members. It's a pleasure to be here. I also have on the call for potentially any detailed questions that I might not have answers to be Guy Williams, who is our Human Services Manager, and Colleen Hunsaker, who's our Parks and Trails Director. So I will start sharing my screen. Let's go. Beginning. And I can only see like one person at a time, so if there's any questions, please let me know and we can stop and answer questions as we go. So as Council President Perez said, this is an update on human services and also the homelessness response moving forward through COVID, but we also are doing an update, kind of a history of what the city's been providing prior to COVID, so that the community and council members will remember all of the things that the city has been doing and then the additional things that we will be doing moving forward. So pre-COVID, the city, specifically with REACH, which is Renton Ecumenical Association of Churches, you're all familiar with, the city has been in big support of REACH. They are the only organization, as it notes here, that provides a day and night shelter for women, children, and families. We have, as a city, provided monetary support for the Meal Coalition, which is what REACH provides currently out of the 300 Rainier building, but for the past 6 years. Additional support for sustaining their operations through agreements, a little over $300,000, and that's been over the past 5 years. And then we established the Center of Hope, which was in the day shelter down in the city's old jail. We did obviously a lot of tenant improvements, capital improvements to that to get it as nice and bright and cheery as we could, with cooking amenities as well as washer and dryer amenities and things like that. But as COVID hit, and you will see this in future slides, the area wasn't big enough, plus the ventilation and being able to socially distance with the number of people in there was over challenging. So we worked forward with another plan, like I said, which you'll see in a little bit. The city also provided a temporary use permit for the 300 Rainier building, which is the old chamber located next to the airport. That does support the Meal Coalition and the homeless feeding program, as well as doubles as our severe weather shelter during inclement weather times when shelters are activated in King County. And then a former council member, Don Person, also through the years has coordinated major food donations, typically 1 to 2 times a month. And they would be delivered to Center of Hope, either downstairs in City Hall or out to the Meal Coalition. Also pre-COVID, what the Community Services Department specifically, we have assisted providing resources for the homeless and near homeless. Our main provider for that is the Human Services Division, which coordinates all of these partners and all the resources. For the past, since 1989, we had to look it up. I couldn't remember when we started, but the city has provided a grant program through Human Services to help fund a lot of the agencies that provide all the wraparound services. And for the past 8 years, the city has funded $562,000 to this grant program annually. And we'll see in the next slide how that is broken down. It also, as the Human Services Division continues to update what we have as a resource guide, so that provides the connecting services. We have, when City Hall was open, we would have drop-in visits from clients continually. So we were always trying to coordinate and help assist those people that were looking for services that could be near homeless or looking for utility rebates or discounts, and housing, rental assistance, those kind of things. And then we also partner with local churches and organizations, which you will see that moving forward we've done as well, working with St. Matthew's and other area churches for some of the transitioning services that they help assist and provide. Our Recreation and Neighborhoods Division have in the past provided free and reduced cost programs to Renton youth and vulnerable populations, including providing Henry Moses Aquatic Center passes, day passes to the Center of Hope families that have never had the opportunity to take advantage of that program. And then on the other side of the human services, we also have the responsibility for taking care of the illegal encampments that cause issues out in our public spaces. And so although we are now trying to be as understanding as we can, there are also times that we definitely need to address those encampments and get them out of our open spaces or areas that frequent with other populations. As I mentioned, through our 2019 and 20 agency funding, this is the percentage breakdown. As you can see, homeless services and housing is the higher percentage of what we allocate to the different services. So the Human Service Advisory Committee has multiple agencies and grant applications that come in and do the review process and then forward the recommendation on to council during our budget process for the funding. And that will be coming up here in September, October timeframe. Still pre-COVID, these are some of the partners and resources. As I mentioned before, the cold weather shelter, the city of Renton contracts with Catholic Community Services to provide the management. We provide the community outreach events that had started with KCLS, City of Renton, and Village of Hope. There's a warm-up breakfast 7 days a week. That's at the 300 Rainier building that REACH provides. Same with Meal Coalition. That's evening meals Friday through Sunday. The day shelter, again, Center of Hope. The night shelter was partnered with Harambe Church and REACH. The Arise Men's Shelter is a program where the men are transitioning out of homelessness and have jobs and then have been historically coordinating with area churches. And so we help coordinate that, finding a church for potentially a month or 2 months, and then have contract with Catholic Community Services again to manage that and stay overnight with that group. And then we know we have the Kiwanis Clothing Bank, King County Library System. When they were open, we know that they were a day resource center where homeless individuals would be able to have some shelter. And they were also, KCLS was also a partner with our community outreach monthly events that we worked with Village of Hope on as well. And then Salvation Army provided the evening meals on the other days of the week. So as mentioning the community outreach, this was the homeless community resource event. We held 5 of them in partnership with Village of Hope, which was St. Matthew's, Dr. Linda Smith. We had Wellsprings, multitude of other agencies that partnered with us, serving over 150 clients, which we were able to provide direct resources to. So at KCLS, we had one of the actually King Parker room that we set aside with the agencies that could provide rental assistance, could help with either or housing location, work assistance. That was a direct resource so that individuals could come in and not have to travel to Seattle or areas in King County. They had a one-stop shop, along with providing like backpacks and socks and things like that. So it was hugely successful, and we'll be looking at that as we move forward past through our COVID situation. So we'll start with what's happened now during COVID. We have seen a significant, as you see, 75% increase in the number of people and needs for the food resources. These are the agencies that have helped provide these connecting food services for people. You can see Salvation Army, Margie Williams, King County Emergency Feeding Program, obviously REACH Meal Coalition, Luther's Table, Sustainable Renton, who's now in St. Matthew's Church, which is great. And then the Renton Innovation Zone is something that has a group that's worked through with the school district as well. But this 75% is a real number. Some of it is definitely due to our current residents. in Renton, and others we're seeing an uptick from some of the clients that are in the Red Lion hotel as well. So shelter services, we'll speak to that a little bit with REACH. As I mentioned before, the Center of Hope was we were not able to keep the women and children, families down there because, again, the size, the ventilation, as well as the social distancing. So they have worked on a 24/7 model because of the increase of needs with the families. St. Matthew's Church hosted them for approximately 2 months. And now they are, we coordinated with our Recreation Neighborhoods team. They are in Highlands Neighborhood Center, Community Center. They're the sole clients in there. Obviously, we can't open that to any programming until phase 3, but we've coordinated that. They're in there through probably end of August, first part of September. And they, again, have exclusive use. We've also coordinated shower services as well, that we take them to the Renton Community Center. And then also our human services team worked with the Arise Men's Shelter. That also has increased. And then obviously with churches not being able to be activated as with the numbers that we would like to see with the Arise Men's Shelter, our team worked with Quality Inn and CTAC, and that group is hosted in there during this COVID pandemic. So, and then I also put a note down at the bottom. Obviously, the Red Lion Clients Council is very aware of what has increased through their residency there. Obviously, the need for law enforcement, our life safety with Renton Regional Fire Association or Authority, excuse me. And then also, I had mentioned earlier that 75% increase for the food resources in Renton. Some of that, definitely we are seeing clients that's attributed to some of that King County use as well. I mentioned earlier the Center of Hope's a temporary shelter now at Highlands Neighborhood Center. So we are providing that as a day shelter and a night shelter. It's overnight stay. They have all of the COVID requirements that they are following, and they're doing their cleaning and everything. We've not had any issues whatsoever. They've been very good guests in there. Currently, we have 28 individuals. They have been up to, I believe, 38 individuals. And so we've got that room that we can provide, and that's got enough distancing and overnight stay and food resources as well. And I mentioned earlier that we have coordinated shower access at the Renton Community Center. And also St. Matthew's has allowed use with their showers as well. So our recreation neighborhood staffs have provided for the kids, because it's a high majority of children, sports equipment so they can use the gym with a bunch of push toys for the real small toddlers, and arts and crafts supplies. And then our team, out of their own pockets, have donated boxes of diapers and wipes and things like that to help support that group. So now moving forward again with the COVID, City of Renton, through the CARES Act funding, has allocated $500,000 towards the homeless or the nearly homeless population. $305,000 is going towards rental utility assistance, and the 3 partners there are confirmed. They will each be receiving $100,000 to allocate out to the rental community that needs assistance. And then we're also working with REACH again. They are looking for more permanent location for the 24/7 type of activity. And so we are working with Commerce. We have to make sure that the $50,000 that they're requesting is reimbursable, will hit the requirements and is reimbursable. But we are working on that, and our team meets with Commerce this week. And then again, $150,000 towards food assistance, which will be allocated out to multiple agencies throughout Renton. And again, we are working with. We have. Let's see, we just got an update that we have Sustainable Renton has applied for cold and dry storage containers, and then also some food resource. And And another, looks like that's the one that we're confirming right now. So again, multiple agencies throughout Renton that will get the food assistance. The next funding is CDBG COVID or CARES funding, which is separate than our normal CDBG. As you can see, we have about $410,000 that we now will be supporting those that need the services. Renton Housing Authority is able to allocate out $250,000 to the rental assistance, and St. Vincent de Paul can allocate out $50,000 also to rental assistance, and these are all to Renton residents. And then again, we have food assistance going out to multiple Renton agencies. We have Salvation Army, actually to an agency that we're confirming. Salvation Army has requested freezers, hot water tanks, and computers, and then also a support in food resources as well. So we're working through that with our contract process. But as you can see, a lot that is going out in addition to our normal services that the Renton, City of Renton has provided and Human Services has provided. So moving forward, as we come out of COVID or we come into phases that we can be allowed to get into buildings, meet more face-to-face, we definitely, as I mentioned earlier, the homelessness community resource event was hugely successful, serving a lot of clients and a lot of agencies and partners that were on the wait list that wanted to be involved with this. So we're really excited about moving that forward again. And we had plans prior to COVID to move to the Highlands neighborhood library as well. So we would have two potentially a month, one down in the downtown or the Cedar River Library, and then one up in the Highlands neighborhood, which would bring those resources to that population as well. So we're really excited about that. I think that is it's a successful way of bringing resources together, that one-stop shop for the community to be able to get help when they need it. We're also working with the Interface Task Force on the homelessness to develop the remedies, and that means we're working with the faith-based communities for, how can we bring in and potentially use their parking lots for overnight car camping as needed. We'd have to work through that. More food resources, such as St. Matthew's, who now has Sustainable Renton there. And then, or work opportunities. There could be some resources that we could either work on job training or just actually being able to tie individuals up into getting them some work. We always and will always continue to look for funding streams, new funding streams and grants. We're always looking towards that, especially for rental assistance and low-income housing. Definitely, our team has their ears to the grindstone, along with Doug Levy, who's also helped assisted with looking for those type of grant opportunities. The city and community services, along with Public Works and our community and economic development team, are working towards establishing a more permanent location for the Mule Coalition Severe Weather Shelter, and then also adding in multi-service or wraparound services that would include mental health. We are working with a couple entities on that right now, not to final stage yet, but very close to getting that set up. As we noted, the 300 Rainier building is in a temporary use permit status, so we definitely are urgently looking and identifying that location and what that will look like as we transition through this process. As we noted down below, the city has received a little over $200,000 from the state, which will be a big boost to help get that development started and get those services put into a more permanent location. Lastly, as we're looking at the encampments and cleanups, I just wanted to really at a high level touch base on that. I know that the committee saw this a few weeks ago, or about a month ago. We provided an update on this, but again, we still do need to make sure that it is safe out in our open spaces, in our parks, for all of our patrons. So during this time frame, during COVID, we are not really going out aggressively to hunt out every location, but we do provide cleanups for already vacated camps. So we want to make sure that that area is cleaned up. Or if there's an active camp that's posing a major health risk, we will post that and follow the process and make sure that we get that cleaned up. And in the same light, if we receive multiple complaints from potentially residents or park users, trail users, we'll need to get in and make sure that we address that as well. And then just a reminder that Community and Economic Development, they take code enforcement out. They're the ones that take care of the private property areas that may have encampments or garbage cleanups like we have on our public land and city-owned land. And again, we do provide outreach when we post those encampments so that we provide resource cards. This is just a sample of what we have in the packet. So there's a multitude of resources that individuals can reach out to. We had in the past when police came out with our parks people, we were able to bring a Catholic Community Services counselor out. I think obviously that resource is stretched right now, but we will be looking at providing that moving forward as that resource becomes available again. And with that, that provides pretty much the overview of human services, past and present, and moving forward. I wanted to share also before questions, just to know past that slide, we have I provided the human services mission and also the role, which I think is really important. So we also had that at the last presentation, but I wanted to make sure council had that just in case.
Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it. Great presentation. Council members, I cannot see right now who's raising their hands, so please speak up if you have any questions, please.
Madam President?
Yeah, Council Member O'Halloran.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
So I love the fact that we are doing so much. I'm extremely proud of what we do here in the city, and we walk our talk, and that's really, really impressive. And but I was wondering, do we have any kind of metrics about how we're doing in these areas against our neighbors, our neighboring cities? And do we have any idea of whether we're keeping pace or we're ahead of the pack? Or that's my question. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, we can provide some information. It's hard to go apples to apples because of population differences and what is measured, but we can forward on to council. There are funding differences in some of the grant processes, but we also, as the city of Renton, have provided much more in-kind services to the agencies. So again, kind of hard to do the apples to apples, but we can get a comparison and send that out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Bannon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Kelly, for the presentation. I have a few questions, and if other council member asks questions, I can wait for as I go through the list. I wanted to ask for confirmation, and maybe because I heard wrong last time, but so the 562,000 annual, we've been getting that through community services every year, right?
It's city money. It's budgeted in the human services budget. So yes, for the past 8 years.
Okay, so every year we get 562.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess it was the CVG grant that we didn't put any more money into because I remember at council retreat we mentioned that we didn't put more money into it.
The CVG grant. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
The one that we put up on the slide here is specific to COVID, so it's a separate pot of money. Okay.
Yeah, but at council retreat we were saying last time that we didn't put money into community services, and so it was done more civic core. So I guess I was just trying to figure that out.
Right.
But we are still getting the $562K annually for human services.
Correct. And for that CDBG you were talking about that we had for the, downtown storefronts and things like that, there have been leftover monies in there that have gone to human services that couldn't be contracted through CED or couldn't be used in the time frame. So we would take it back and then be able to work with agencies that could handle CDBG process.
Okay, awesome. And then as far as the current COVID CARES Act money, as we were talking about the $310,000 or the $500 for homeless and folks nearing homelessness, what was the process as far as outreach to these organizations, specifically the 3 that was selected?
So we were, again, as our human services team works with these agencies, there are certain agencies that can handle that process or that have that type of workload that they can work through. And we also wanted to try to diversify it as much as we could in the community. So these were the agencies that were selected. We had a couple other also in the, actually both CARES Act and the CDBG CV funds, which are a little more restrictive in the reporting categories, that agencies didn't have the capacity to take on more.
Yeah, and the reason I asked is because for at least one of the organization, I haven't really seen them in Renton, helping Renton community. But there were others that we mentioned last time that you mentioned REWA, that I don't see their name on the final selection, or maybe it was, but just left off. And of course, I believe Asian Counseling Referral Services and ENCAMPMENTS, they reach out. So I just kind of wanted to understand the process of selection.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, we did reach out, and Guy can jump in on REWA. They were not able to take the monies, or it wasn't eligible. Same with the Asian Services, I believe it was. They were wanting to give out gift cards, food sources or resourcing gift cards, and the CARES Act funding, that's not something that is allowable. So we were trying to work through some others, through which we may still be working with the Asian Counseling Services on some other things besides food resources. We're still working through all of those applications right now.
If I could add that the various fundings, particularly commerce fundings, that the different requirements for some of these agencies they could not meet. So there's CDBG funding, for example. There's most of the agencies cannot meet the requirements of CDBG. So we have to give those to those agencies that have establishments and have capacity. And then when it comes to commerce funding, some of the agencies wanted to do some of the things, for example, gift cards, as you mentioned, that was not allowed under the grant process. So we have to be mindful of that when we're giving out funding.
That's it. Councilmember Van, you have any more questions? I think Councilmember Van, can you hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have more questions?
Yeah, I have a few more, but I guess just following up with that question then, I didn't really hear what Guy's response was because there was a disconnect. If you can repeat the last sentence or two, sorry.
No, what I was saying was when you think about the different buckets of funding, CDBG is one bucket with different requirements. Commerce funding has a different requirement. So when we look at the plethora of agencies that we tried to reach out to, some of the agencies did not have the capacity to meet some of the requirements. So when you start speaking about, for example, giving out gift cards, commerce fundings was not particularly pleased to hear that. So those kind of requirements are, we have to be mindful of how we give out money and who we're giving it out and what reasons we're giving it out for.
And thank you, Guy, and to remind Council on that, the CARES Act funding is a quick pot of money, if you will. We need to be able to spend it by October. And so it can't go through the normal Human Services Advisory Committee grant process. We have to get money out right away and find out so we can get money out into our community. The longer we wait, the the less money is going to get to our community members.
So then I asked the next question as far as the, I guess, are there requirements as far as these nonprofits that are receiving the grants to do a report after October, and what is this that reporting looks like?
There are requirements, and I would have to check with Commerce. It changes. I don't want to say daily, but it has been changing a little bit on what they're expecting. So we can definitely, we can provide kind of a high-level overview of what that looks like. But as with anything, because those funds are reimbursable, meaning that the city would be having to do that process and reimburse whatever agency is receiving the funds. So there has to be tracking on those. I don't have that in front of me, and like I said, it has been changing a bit over the past couple months.
Okay, if that is okay, Councilmember Van, I'm going to give opportunity to other council members to participate and come back to you. Councilmember Benedetti.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, it's a subtext in your presentation, but I think it's worth pointing out that with all of these different federal and state funding streams, it's been a huge lift for the city to then give the time and talent of the people who are in the city to do the work of working with all of these agencies and explaining how it is that these processes are going to work and being essentially a throughput for this funding. That if there were not the folks in your roles in the city doing that work, that these funds would not be available to these agencies. So I just want to say thank you for the incredible amount of work that you're doing. And it is really, really complicated stuff.
Yes, it is.
And these agencies, it is to the credit of the city to have a well-developed human services department to be able to mobilize in a crisis like this. And if we did not already have that, we would not be in the position that we're in. So I know that isn't something that's called out specifically in the presentation, but I did want to say it goes noted.
And I would, to your point, I apologize for interrupting, but
That's okay.
The Division of Human Services is literally 2 people.
Right.
So, so in Diane Utek, I meant to, she's not on the call, but I did mean to give her some kudos, because she's been, her and Guy have been reaching out to all the agencies and trying to funnel through this. And I also want to give some recognition to finance as well, because they'll be handling, a lot of that process with us. So, and have been working on it. So thank you.
I just had a couple of questions around some things that were mentioned at the council retreat, and I just wanted to see sort of where they're at in this continuing landscape, which is that we talked at the council retreat about that potential location for some of those services being that St. Vincent de Paul building out there on Rainier. Is that something that we're still looking into?
We are, as I mentioned again, and trying to keep it at a high level because we're still in some final discussions, but there is the property just north of St. Vincent de Paul is a potential right now that we're in conversation with.
Okay. And I know that we talked also about another potential spot for some of that community resource work, in addition to the libraries being the community court. And I'm wondering if that's something that we're still exploring. I know that it was a real blow to those of us who work in the Burien community that they canceled theirs in the last couple of weeks. And so I was just wondering if that was still something that we're pursuing in this community.
That's a great question, because it barely was hitting us when that community court, I think at the time, Guy, I don't know if Guy has any information on that.
That's an interesting question. We were in the infancy stages of developing a committee around that when COVID hit, and I have not heard one peep of it since then.
It is definitely something that, along with our homelessness resource events and those kind of things, that we would definitely embrace and work with partners if that was something that could be moved forward with the staffing capacity and whatever the needs were along with that. But yeah, anything. Guy is he's reaching out all the time, and the team has been, and anything that we can do to make a difference, they've been very, very proactive doing.
Yeah, I only mentioned it because it was something that was brought up at the retreat as being a potential another opportunity to do that outreach work. So that was all I had. Thank you very much, Council President.
Thank you, and I want to echo what Councilmember Benedetti say. I know that this has been a lot of work. I know federal money at the end of the day has a lot of eyes looking at that the money goes to the right places, and then to be able to be reimbursed, they need to have all the information in place. So I know how hard it is at the end of the day to have to choose who's going to receive these grants or not, because the federal government is very specific about the rules and regulations for the CDBG. So thank you very much for all the hard work that you have done. And any council members, before I come back to Council Member Van, Council Corman, do you have any questions?
No questions exactly, and a comment which I hope is helpful. But so first of all, I want to just say it's a great presentation, really good analysis of the funding we have available, and under the COVID strain, the additional ways that we're working to resolve the homelessness as a city of Renton. But I did want to say, for the benefit of the public that may be watching this, I always feel kind of funny talking about homelessness within the city of Renton and what we're doing without mentioning Renton Housing Authority, which is a separate entity. And I can't speak for them, but they do an enormous amount. So it's a little bit like having a city presentation on library services and not mentioning the King County library system. Because, you know, we as residents of Renton have voted many times for bond issues to actually pay for housing for seniors and others. And so those people that are represented by us are also represented by Renton Housing Authority, which is a standalone entity, but which does possess like 850 or so subsidized units that they have paid for, and many of them with our taxpayer dollars, to provide actual apartments to actually take people out of homelessness. And they're working extra hard to build new ones right now. And I've done some calculations that I think if all of King County were working as hard as our own Renton Housing Authority is, considering the county is 20 times bigger, the county has about 3 times as many, the King County Housing Authority has about 3 times as many units as Renton Housing Authority has. They own about 3 times as many, but the county is 20 times bigger. So, you know, to get perspective on how hard the housing authorities work to not just put somebody in a hotel where they're still technically homeless or on a cot in a gymnasium, but actually in an apartment. So having said that, I just want to stress that, you know, so we're doing work with people that are out on the streets, that are living in cars. We're trying to figure out how to help them. But I just want to remind the community that we also have the Renton Housing Authority doing incredible work to try and keep people from being homeless in the first place. And just want to shout out to them and also to our community, which has continued to back them, and to our leadership, our community services department, which works with them every day of the week. So I want to say that.
Councilman Foreman, too, we do recognize, and they are an amazing partner. Renton Housing Authority does a lot of work, and so that's why we, through that CDBG CARES funding, they are allocated $250,000 towards their rental assistance as well. So
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks.
That is great. Thank you very much, Councilmember Corman. Councilmember Van.
I have one question. Sorry, I'm trying to look at the notes here. So the presentation basically mentioned that there were a rise in 75% of food service and so forth within our homeless population, of folks nearing homelessness. And one of the part you mentioned that the guests at the Red Lion Hotel were using these services. So I'm curious to see which program they used, because my understanding was that they had 3 meals a day, right, provided by King County. And so just wanted to know if you have any data in that.
So we're getting information from a couple of different agencies, both Salvation Army and Reach Meal Coalition out at 300 Rainier, where they're seeing an uptick in the number of clients that are coming there. And you're correct that I believe that Red Line is still providing the 3 meals a day, but they're not keeping those clients in that facility. Those people can go out and about, and they are doing that. And that's part of, again, just some of the information we're receiving from, like I said, Salvation Army, specifically the evening meals, and then also the Reach down at 300 Rainier. And Guy may have a little bit more. Guy are pretty much the Renton, King County food guru, and has been connecting a ton of resources together and getting some help throughout the agency. So I don't know, Guy, if you have any more information on data.
Yeah, well, the 75% number was not specific to homelessness only. That's just the uptick since COVID has begun. We're seeing a lot of families that you normally don't see, and they were judging that by the type of cars that they were now noticing coming through and needing food, not only at the Sustainable Renton store, but also at the emergency feeding program, and as well as at Salvation Army. So specifically, in terms of data coming from the Red Lion Hotel, no. What we've heard about that in terms of having numbers, how many people are coming from that area for food, I don't know that number. But we are knowing, what I do know is the people who are serving breakfast at the 300 Rainier has noticed a huge uptick, and saying that it looks like it's a different type of clientele. And we know that the type of clientele they're speaking of are those that are staying at the Renton Lion Hotel, Red Lion Hotel.
Is everybody familiar with our current population and our, prior to COVID, our current population has pretty much stayed the same at the different agencies that have provided these food resources.
Thank you.
And thank you. And what I know is that they don't turn anybody away. That when they provide the meals, they provide it to everybody that shows at that place. And as you mentioned, they are very familiar with what we call the regulars. Yes. So, but I do understand that, especially in areas like that, services that are providing not just the meal, but the food services like sustainable. Of course, I agree that those most have increased not because of the homeless population, but because so many families these days are in need. Because they lost their job or because they're not able to work right now because of the COVID-19. So well, any more questions or comments about this topic? Kelly, I just have one more question because I love this project and this program, and I'm looking forward that how it's going to continue, which is the Homeless Community Resource Event. I know when we had the first briefing about this event, I was very impressed. So if you just can explain a little bit more, what are the kind of services that they were provided there, and what was the response of the community in general?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would like to have Guy answer that. He's been kind of the brainchild of that, as well as working with Village of Hope and KCLS, and then all of the area partners that have been involved. So Guy, if you want to, he's done a great job. That was, a big lift to try to get that put together.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say that program was put together with $0. There was no funds associated with that. It came together with the help of the Village of Hope, with Dr. Linda Smith, Pastor Casey Khan, Wellness Wellsprings program. We put our heads together to try to put together a program where homeless people and those who are on the verge of experiencing homelessness could have a one-stop shop to come and get health care services, come and get a phone card, come and find immediate housing resources, food vouchers, bus tokens, or what have you. We had over 20 partners in line to come in when we had those programs going. We even had flu shots. We had vaccines going during the winter. In terms of that continuing, we're not really sure what that looks like because no one knows what moving forward looks like. As it relates to our partnership with KCLS, they're going forth with a new program in terms of how they're going to move forward and how they're going to serve the public. And I'm not really sure if they're going to allow non-participants or people who are not actually using services there to come and just hang out during during the day. So we're looking at different locations and different avenues as we move forward. Right now, for example, I was doing the resource event for King County Human Services planners. We're doing that via Zoom. So we certainly can't we can do something similar to that. It won't be hands-on. We certainly can't get homeless folks on the Zoom, but we certainly can work with providers to get out resources and services in a new manner. We have to rethink how we do it, think outside the box.
You got it. And one of the things too, that potentially KCLS could be a partner on depending on how they, like you said, they want to move forward, because it would be the use of a room for that event. And then I know that and Councilwoman Benedetti may have some information too, but how they move forward through their normal days, like will potentially be different than what they've been providing prior.
I know that safety and COVID-19 right now is a priority, but my question is this something that it could be considered to be done outside, like in a parking lot, or has to be an inside event?
Well, we could do it pretty much anywhere, depending on weather. So, having it indoors in the off season is a little more obviously comfortable and able for the service providers to come in. But if it's in a time frame like this, once we get past COVID, but I mean, in the summertime, we can definitely do outdoors.
The reason we chose the King County Library is because we tried to provide an atmosphere or a service where those folks were located. So we wanted to bring the service to them opposed to them coming to us somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, I totally understand. Thank you. Councilmember O'Halloran.
I just wanted to mention that I attended the community resource that was over at Liberty High School, I believe, last year. And it was packed. It was so well attended, and people were parking miles away and walking in because it was so well attended. It was just an awesome, awesome thing. So thank you for any part that we played in that. I don't know if that was more the school district or...
I think that may have been the school district. But I don't think we've never been out to Liberty High School.
No, not this particular event. You're talking about a different type of resource event, I believe, that was happening at Liberty School.
It was for homeless and people who were on the verge of experiencing homeless, and they were giving out socks and backpacks and free food, and it was just, anyway, yeah, I might be thinking of something different.
Which brings me to a question. Are we partnering with the Renton School as well?
Well, yes, we have the Vento McKenna program is a part of our resource as well, Vento McKenna.
Thank you.
And also Renton Innovation Zone as well through this food access and things like that and resource to them.
Okay. Council members, anybody else has any questions or comments before we wrap up this meeting? I see none. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, Kelly. I know that this has been a very challenging time, but I'm very proud of the work that we have been doing to keep providing for our communities in need. And I very much appreciate all the hard work that you have put together to provide the funding for the CARES Act, because I know that's how many people this money is going to help. So thank you again, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.